Click for IB Biology. We're going to take a look at some other monosaccharides now. We're going to look at the hexose. It's a C6 sugar, fructose. Then we're going to look at a C5 sugar called pentose, and then a C3 sugar called triose. This covers the diversity of monosaccharides that we encounter during the course. Should you wish, there's a PDF in the description that you can download and annotate yourself, and then you can follow up with a quiz to make sure that you've secured your understanding of what has been covered in this part of the course. So immediately we see that the formula for fructose is the same as glucose. This is the molecular formula, C6H12O6. And yet, if we look at these two diagrams here, it is quite obvious that the structural formula is quite different. The ring structure, so this ring structure here is made up of just the 4 carbons. So if we count the carbons through in this diagram, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 up here. So we got 2 outlying carbons away from the ring structure of fructose. Students are not required to know the names or the details of the structures of this molecule, but since it is a molecule which is very common in biology, especially in plant biology, then we should have some awareness. It's a very, very sweet sugar, very soluble. It's described actually as the sweetest of the sugars. It too gives a positive Benedict test because of the ketone group that it carries. So those of you who are chemistry students, you can follow up on that particular piece of information. The metabolism of fructose is a little bit more complex. Initially, for instance, in mammals and in humans, fructose is not used in respiration, but will actually be taken up by the liver and usually stored as fats, actually. However, something like the honeybee is capable of metabolizing it directly. And of course, as we know, the honeybee is responsible for collecting nectar to construct honey. And of course, we know that plants themselves are producing fructose in fruit, the sweet tasting fruit, for the dispersal of the fruit itself. So that's our hexoses. If we take a look at the pentoses, the 5 carbon sugars, so C5H10O5, and the best known of the pentoses is ribose, the ribose sugar, which is present in DNA. So you'll perhaps recall this, deoxyribose nucleic acid. And you can see here that we've got carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, with the 5th carbon sitting out here as a satellite like this. So this is ribose. And since we mentioned DNA, so DNA is deoxy. That deoxy is because on carbon 2 there is a hydrogen group, whereas on the ribose sugar, which we would get in RNA, there is an OH group. Pentoses play all sorts of roles within the cell. They're involved in energy, and particularly in ATP. We'll come back to this one in a short while. They're also involved in cell signaling and very much involved in the structure of DNA, which is covered under A1.2 as we consider the structure and function of DNA. Triose sugars are 3 carbon sugars with the molecular formula C3H6O3. And here we have an example over here of a C3 compound. We've got carbon 1, 2, and 3. And if you count through the structure, you'll find that it observes and it sticks to the idea of carbon having 4 bonds, but notice here it has 2 to the oxygen. So 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So this is preserved in the structure here. Triose sugars are involved in metabolic pathways, often involved in building larger molecules, and we're certainly going to come across trioses when we look at respiration and in photosynthesis. We'll come back to look at various forms of triose at that time. So that covers the diversity of monosaccharides. We'll be moving on to look at disaccharides and then polysaccharides. The links to these videos are now shown in front of you, with links to the channel for subscription, but also to the playlists.